Welcome to the Great Assembly. May I begin by surveying this Great Assembly. I'm surveying you. As you may imagine, it's one of the features of this medium is that I am able to see people that I haven't seen for a long time, which brings joy to this body and mind. Perhaps you also are seeing people that you haven't seen for a long time. Yes, indeed. I haven't seen some of you for a long time. And some of you are apparently new to me. Welcome to the new people. And I'm not going to do it, but I would like to make special note of many of you who I really haven't seen for a while and who I know are living very challenging life right now, but still coming to see and listen to the Dharma. For now, people seem to still be coming, but for now, I've finished the survey. So yes, I want to begin by telling you that I knew that I would probably be giving a talk today, quite a long time ago. And several days ago, the thought came into this consciousness, something like this. If this offering this morning, if this was to be the last talk that I would offer, the last talk that I would give, what would I say? If this were my last chance to give a gift to this great assembly, what gift would I give? That question came to my mind. That question came to my mind. And I didn't have an immediate response. And one of the responses that came after a while was, in a way, that's a high bar to set for a talk. That what I say now would be worthy of my last message, my last gift. But then it started to come. Something worthy, not only as a gift to you all and to the whole world, but maybe worthy to be my last gift. My last words. My last, if you excuse the expression, my last will and testament. Yeah. I really do wish that what I'm saying now is worthy to be my last will and testament. So what is it that came to me? Well, it's something that's not unfamiliar to me and also not unfamiliar to many of you who are my old friends. And this is it. This is it. I imagine, and also it is my faith, that I am sitting in the center of a world, or we could say the world, but I would say at the center of a world of suffering and sorrow, great suffering, great sadness, great sorrow. And the sorrow is sorrow for the suffering of others and myself, but also sorrow for any actions that I have participated in, that I have been, that contribute to, that play along with, that collude with the sources of suffering. I am imagining, and it is my faith, it is my will to sit at the center of all suffering, all kinds, which is for me, all beings. All the kinds of suffering for me are beings, and I wish to, and I imagine that I'm sitting in the middle of it all. Furthermore, I imagine it is my faith that each of you and all of us are sitting at the center of all suffering. My faith is that this is where the Buddhas also sit. This is where the awakened ones awaken. They awaken at the center of all suffering. And we, I assert, I imagine, I believe, we also are in the process of awakening in this place at the center of all suffering. Wisdom and compassion are working together and do work together and will work together at this seat at the center of all suffering and sorrow. This center, which is open to it all, welcoming it all. Welcome all beings. You are welcome here. Wisdom and compassion are working together in this place. Generosity is working in this place. This is the place where the inborn and natural tendency of living beings to try to get something turns with and into and out of giving. Wisdom and compassion work together at the center where giving is living, with the impulses to get. And with the impulses of to get come all kinds of violence. With the impulse to get land from other beings, from other communities, the impulse to get land and its wealth, the impulse to enslave or force people to work for our own gain, for our own getting, brings with it violence. The suffering of all this violence is all around us. We sit in the center, and there we have the opportunity to practice giving, which is reality. We have a chance to practice giving and realize the reality of giving. You are. I am. We are. We are the heart of the world. We are the generous heart of the world. That's where we really live. And we're not at all separate from the tragedy that comes with people trying to get something from this world. We practice generosity. We are practicing, in reality, giving in the midst of lots and lots of attempts to get, sometimes at whatever cost. This giving is a flowing from me to you. It is a flowing from you to me. It is you including me, and me including you, and you including all beings, and all beings including you. In this way, each of us, each of you, all of us are the heart of the world, the generous heart of the world. And the generous heart of the world is the working of wisdom and compassion. You are a gift to the world, and you are giving to the world. The world is a gift to you. The world of suffering is a gift to me. It is flowing into and onto me in a process of generosity. And I am flowing to the world of suffering in a process of generosity. This is my will and testament, which could be my last. And part of my responsibility, part of what is entailed in this will and testament, is that I remember it. I remember my will and testament. I remember that I am the heart of the world. And I believe and assert it is the same for you. That part of your will and testament is to remember what your will and testament is, to remember it, to be mindful of it, to be ardent about it, to be present with it. Your real will and testament, the one that is the heart, the generous heart of the world. And it's hard to remember it in the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, in the onslaughts of suffering and sorrow. It's easy to get disoriented from what? From the life we imagine, the life we want to live. This generosity, when we practice it, is joyful and peaceful. It generates joy and peace in the center, at the center of all suffering. As far as I can see, it does not eliminate sentient beings trying to get something. It does not eliminate greed. I don't see that. But this heart of generosity, which is not me by myself and or you by yourself. This heart of generosity is the way you flow to me and I flow to you. That generates peace and joy in the middle of an ocean of greed and violence and tragedy. Joy and peace, I imagine to be at the center, the Buddha at the center, but the Buddha has not, and may perhaps, I don't know when, maybe someday the Buddha, the awakening, will transform all greed into generosity. But so far, it has not happened. There's still greed, which has not been completely illuminated by wisdom and compassion of generosity. It seems to me. I imagine that. I kind of believe that there is greed and violence. But again, I wish to sit in the middle of it all with you. And I wish you to sit in the middle of it all with me and with each other. That's my wish. That's my will. That's my vow. What about you? Where do you want to sit? Now, there is, you will not be surprised to hear, another aspect of my will. Of my wish, of my testament, of my assertion of faith, which is a prayer which I often say to you. The prayer is that this great assembly will receive silence and stillness. I pray that this great assembly will remember the gift of silence and stillness, which is flowing into us and onto us, and which we are flowing onto and into. I pray that this great assembly and all great assemblies remember silence and stillness. And in remembering it, practice it, or practice sitting at the center of all beings and remembering silence and stillness. And then transmit it from the center. It is in silence and stillness where this wisdom and compassion, where this joyful, generous heart is living brightly and unceasingly. And I pray that we remember silence and stillness, because there we will discover it, exercise this great heart. The silence and stillness supports us not to be distracted by the onslaught of challenges and change and tragedy. Open to it, but steadfast, open to it. Open to it, but generous with it. Therein, this great generosity. Thrives. This great wisdom and compassion is renewable in this silence and stillness. And it's changing, so it needs to be renewed, refreshed, recreated, regenerated. Again, part of the responsibility of this will to sit here and practice wisdom, compassion, generosity is to refresh it, to care for it, to nurture it. It needs this, and the silence and stillness is the womb of refreshing this great vow. You are the heart of the world. You are the eyes of the world, surveying all beings with compassion, surveying all beings generously, which means, again, you give yourself to them and they give themselves to you. You can see this, you can watch this, remembering silence and stillness. This is what I wish for all of us. This is what I wish for my life with you. I feel like this could be a worthy topic for my last gift to you. And I'll check tomorrow to see how I feel about this gift. Thank you for receiving this little gift. And if there's anything anybody wishes to give to the Great Assembly, or if there's any gifts you wish to receive from me that I haven't yet given, you're welcome to request them. Thank you very much.
Before we begin Q&A, I just wanted to make one announcement that we are having our spring fundraising campaign known as the Zenathon. I'll be posting a link in the chat to the Zenathon website. I encourage you to visit the website to read stories from your friends, teachers, and fellow practitioners about the heartbeat of their practice and to contribute to the Zenathon on their page. You can also make your own page and become a fundraiser. Your generous support allows San Francisco Zen Center to keep on providing opportunities to practice together and share transformational teachings with thousands of people worldwide through our online programming and residential training. The link will show in your chat window now. And our first offering is from Stephen.
Oh, hi, Reb. So yeah, I think we've talked about this some time before, but I guess I would ask you, do you think that there's going to be, there are actually other experiments? I mean, in some ways it doesn't matter, but are there other experiments in something like human being in other places? Because I mean, I will try not to take too much of your time, but there was a Zen thing, an evening with Pico Air and John Cyprian, the guitar playing. I don't know, he was some kind of Christian monk and Catholic monk in Big Sur. And the evening concluded with Pico Air saying, you know, he'd asked Queen Victoria if things were getting better, and I believe I've got this right. Queen Victoria said decisively and emphatically, no, it's unquestionable. You know, that it's things have gotten better since I was a girl. And I think what he meant by that was just there's, for example, I mean, and now this is actually getting disputed by the current historical record, but I mean, in some ways, Americans are doing fewer last Matthew Shepard incidents and so on, and even that's getting questioned now in some recent attacks. But I mean, even assuming you get all these people who are nice to each other on the planet, 8 billion and counting, then you still have this very difficult, sticky question about these really nice human beings who don't hate each other in ways that you don't want them to hate each other are destroying the planet. So, I mean, how does Buddha deal? I've asked you this several different ways, but I mean, it seems to me Buddha's got a problem there because, I mean, in some ways, does he just let go of the planet or she and start a project on another planet? Because this project kind of seems fairly irrevocable. And so we're looking at some post-apocalyptic situations, which are really pretty close. And so, anyways, the optimism of Pico Air and Queen Victoria didn't quite seem to crack the nut.
Well, if if it were true that things are getting better, Buddha would practice the same way as Buddha would practice if things were not getting better. The practice would be the same if things are getting worse. If good things happen, I think generosity can applaud them. Give the gift of applause for kindness. Give the gift of applause for peacemaking. And when the historical Buddha saw cruelty, the historical Buddha said, "This is not my way." The historical Buddha said, "Ill will is not my practice. You're not my disciple if you have ill will." However, the Buddha practiced the same generosity with ill will as with loving kindness. So I don't know if there is more loving kindness in the world today than there used to be. And I do not know if there's more ill will than there used to be. But it seems to me that there's lots and lots of loving kindness in the world, which is wonderful. And it seems there's lots and lots of ill will, which is terrible. Hatred and ill will are terrible. Disrespect is terrible, and I see a lot of it. My will and testament is to practice generosity and compassion with ill will when it comes, and violence when it comes. And that's what I see the Buddha did. When the Buddha said, "If you have ill will, you're not my disciple," that was Buddha's compassion. That was Buddha's gift at that time. I see that as peaceful, joyful. But I actually don't know whether things are getting better or worse. I do not know. I'm just staking my claim in the midst of a world that I really have no way of evaluating, completely. Thank you for your question, Stephen. Thank you for your love of the world.
Our next offering is from Yuki.
morning.
Good morning.
When I think about sitting in the midst of the suffering in the world, I feel like I'm sitting in the middle of a puddle of my own tears and an ocean of tears from all beings. And it's a little hard from that place to think of, to find joy. You know, I can't,
Don't look for joy.
well,
Don't
but
look
you,
for it. Looking for it is not giving.
well, you said, I thought that there was joy in that
I
place.
did. And if you look for it, you lose it. Buddha's sitting in the midst of an ocean of tears, not looking for joy, and full of joy. Full of joy of being generous with every tear. And also having each tear be generous with Buddha. But Buddha is not looking for joy. If you look for joy, you exile it. You exile it when you look for it. Or maybe not take away you. Just looking for joy exiles joy. Trying to get joy exiles joy. Being generous with tears generates great joy. But if you try to get joy, that's not generosity. That's greed.
Well, I feel the sadness and I don't feel the joy. So I feel kind of stuck.
The Buddha sits in the middle of the ocean of being stuck, the infinite ways of being stuck. I wish to sit in the middle of being stuck without trying to get unstuck. I want to practice generosity with feeling stuck. I want to practice generosity with no joy, zero joy. And that is a great joy.
I guess I have to take that on faith.
I wouldn't say you have to.
I don't know what else to do with it.
Well, you could just receive it. Just receive it.
Okay.
And then also you might receive silence and stillness at the same time. And silence and stillness is not trying to get anything from what you just received. And the joy will be discovered in that medium. But you don't have to believe it. You can just receive it. Or not.
Our next offering is from Gail.
Hi, Reb.
Hi, Gail.
Hello, Great Assembly. My question relates a little bit to Karen's in that I was recently very stuck. Suddenly, it seemed like out of nowhere, I was unable to practice compassion for anything. And I wanted to get everything from my husband, my friends, the world. I was despairing because I couldn't even, and I know what to do, Reb, I couldn't practice compassion toward my lack of compassion or toward my desire to get, and I couldn't practice compassion toward the lack of compassion. I mean, I went down the line and tried. So in the end, what I could give, I would like to finish this and then 2 sentences. In the end, what I could give to myself and the world, I think the world was, I said, well, I have faith in the teachings. even though I feel like I'm unable to practice them now, and I have the courage to endure this state of despair. That's all I could give in that moment. And I was just wondering if that's what you mean by the need to remember. And then, yes, please, whatever you whatever you want to say.
I wouldn't say that's the need to remember. I would say that's remembering. And before you're remembering that you want to persevere. Remembering that is it. That is remembering. Now but the other thing is, when you confess that you could not be compassionate towards your lack of compassion, at that moment, you were practicing compassion in the form of confession. And I think you also felt a little sorrow.
Mhm.
You didn't say it, but I think you felt somewhat sorry that you couldn't be compassionate to your lack of compassion. That you couldn't be compassionate toward you're trying to get something from somebody. When you noticed that and admitted it and felt sorry about it, that noticing and feeling sorry is compassion. It's called the compassionate practice, the pure compassionate practice of confession and repentance. You practiced compassion and didn't notice it, but now I'm pointing you to it.
Mhm.
You did practice it. You were, in a sense, missing out on the compassion which you were practicing.
Mm.
And you practiced it again right now in before the Great Assembly. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next offering is from Karen.
Karen Michael.
Good morning.
Good morning. Who's sitting behind Karin?
This is Gwendoline.
Gwendoline. Hello, Gwendoline.
I'm a student of Bernd Bender.
Welcome, Gwendoline.
She's part of the translation team too.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
May your English be great. I know your German. I know your German is good.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your last will, and I hope there will be many more last wills I can listen to. And so, in a way, what I heard you say is, if I translate that, is accepting things as they are, just as they are. This is it. Don't try to change, don't interfere. And that, you know, reminded me of kind of like a question I have, since this consciousness, the fault-finding mind is pretty strong. Like the mind that looks at things and is, well, you know, this should be a little different this way and that way. And I just read somewhere that, you know, fault-finding mind is an obstacle on the path. And yet there's something that feels like, well, there's also a quality in that, but I'm not really getting it. Like being able to see things that cause, you know, like, yeah, this is causing pain, just to be able to see that. So I'm kind of like trying to find out like what's the obstacle in, you know, a mind that sees mistakes. And if you think if there's also some quality in that, and like where to balance it, or do you get the question or the topic?
I think maybe I do.
Okay.
Maybe I do. It's possible that I do. So let's see. The fault-finding mind I see as an opportunity to practice generosity. If this consciousness has fault-finding in it, I see the fault-finding as an opportunity for me to flow into it and it to flow onto me, and to practice generosity with the fault-finding mind of my consciousness. And if you show me, if you express fault-finding mind to me, I see that as another opportunity to practice generosity with you involved in fault-finding. So I don't, and also if somebody says that your fault-finding is an obstacle, I see that as another opportunity for generosity. I'm sitting in the seat of applying generosity to fault finding if it arises, and also to calling fault finding an obstacle. That's another opportunity to practice generosity. That's the way I see it. So I don't say there's no obstacles. I just say if there's obstacles, those are things to sit in the middle of and practice wisdom and compassion with them. So Dharma gates are boundless. Here's the Dharma gate of fault finding. Here's the Dharma gate of calling fault finding an obstacle. And also this practicing giving is to let the fault finding be fault finding. Letting it be the fault finding is generosity. And,
Yeah.
and let the fault finding let you be who you are.
I think it's like the question is a question of practice. Like, you know, this mind is trained to do that. This fault finding and that's what it like easy, you know, it just does it. So it's more, I think it's a question, okay, on the one hand, I want to be kind to this part of this mind.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get rid of it. Yet when I read, okay, you know, this is an obstacle, I thought, okay, what would be the different, or is there another practice? And would it be helpful to develop maybe a mind that sees the virtues? You know, like virtue finding mind as a practice.
Yeah, if you practice generosity, if you practice compassion with this mind you're talking about, that generates virtue. That is a virtue. And also, if I notice my own shortcomings with compassion, I start to see virtues in others. So if you look at like Samantabhadra's 10 vows, there's the practice of confessing and repenting one's own shortcomings. But that practice is a practice of compassion. For me to notice my own shortcomings is a kindness to other people. Other people want me to be aware of my shortcomings. They don't want to have to do all the work of pointing out my shortcomings. They want me to notice them too. So when I notice them, it's an act of compassion. And if I practice confession of my own shortcomings, that opens my eyes to the virtues of you and all beings. So then I can celebrate your virtues. My mind can do that too. But in order to fully see the virtues of others, I can't skip, I need to address my own shortcomings. Because I can, without any training, I can see faults in others. Without any training, I can see faults in myself. Without any training, I can look down on people. But I need training to discover their virtues fully. And one of the key factors in the training is to notice my shortcomings. Noticing my shortcomings, noticing my fault-finding mind with compassion opens my eyes to the virtues of others. Even others who I just a moment ago saw some shortcoming in.
I think there's a part where it feels okay to notice the shortcomings if that's not attached to like judging. It's like seeing the shortcomings and then not judging it, but like seeing.
Excuse me. Seeing a shortcoming is a judgment. It's a judgment. That's short. It's a judgment. And you can add other judgments to it or not, but it is a judgment. Our mind is constantly judging. Pain, pleasure, neutral. Pain, pressure. This is uncomfortable. This is comfortable. This is, I can't tell which. Constantly we're judging. Judging is, again, another sentient being not to be eliminated. So it's possible you feel, you're thinking a judgment of, you're seeing a fault in yourself or others, and you have a negative sensation with it. They're both opportunities for compassion. It might also be it might also be enjoyable, pleasant to see somebody else's fault. That might be pleasant to some people, but still, the pleasantness is a judgment, and it also is calling for compassion. When your mind judges things positively, that positive judgment is calling for compassion. When your mind judges things negatively, that negative judgment is calling for compassion. It's calling for generosity. It wants to be listened to.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Our next offering is from Homa. Very sorry. Put Jody there. 1 second.
Jody's good enough for me.
Homa's first.
Okay, Homa.
Good morning, Reb. The word of listening, as you were just mentioning, to listen, that every judgment, positive judgment, negative judgment, suffering judgment, any judgment must be listened. Now,
I wouldn't say must, I would say I want to.
I absolutely want to. And I say must, and I really mean must in a sense. The liberation is in the listening, and listening in the liberation. So when I say must, honestly, for me, is a must. I have no choice. There is no choice.
All right.
So I'm coming, I'm speaking from the place of no choice, because I've done this. I have suffered enough. Let's put it this way. I have suffered enough to realize, to not even realize, to start to pay attention. I have suffered enough to pay attention to what is the root of suffering, and what is the nurturing of the root of suffering. Understanding the root and the nourishment of that suffering. And again, I go in my mind, and that understanding the root of suffering, there's liberation of suffering, which I by maybe hearing the teachings that was developed in my head. So I really don't know. I don't know what is the root of suffering, what liberates suffering, but I know I'm suffering. That I know. That is a clear knowingness. And as I'm speaking, I can feel judgment of suffering, weight of suffering, hardness of suffering. I can, the not ability, the inability for tolerance, the inability of tolerating that suffering makes me to go to any teaching or any vision or anything you see, anything I can imagine to get me out of this suffering. So yes, my mind keeps looking, like all the time, looking for ways to be free from pain and suffering. And then I hear the word, then I heard your wish, your will, your testament of stillness, which that's the answer. That's the solution. That I cannot reach, that it's unreachable. So there I see the solution, that it's not reachable. Then what? So what? It's all up in the air.
I pray that you receive silence and stillness.
I do. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next offering is from B. Neldman.
Good morning. My name is Boris. I'm relatively new to San Francisco Soto Zen Center. I'm actually from Baltimore, Maryland, but thank you very much, Mr. Reb, for your teaching. My question is kind of like sharing the first question. That lady's name, Karen. I think she was asking about joy. And when you try to obtain joy, you can never obtain joy because you have an attachment in your mind, I guess. So my question about Satori, spiritual enlightenment, and Mushatoku. So it's, how can I explain that? I'm basically self-taught, but in Maryland here, we don't have a as great Zen centers as you in San Francisco. So that's why I decided to join yours. And hopefully when COVID is over, I'll be able to come there and do the retreat physically. So Satori, spiritual enlightenment, what I read from the book, especially from Taisen Deshimaru, a Japanese monk, from Zen monk, he said it's, when you sit in Zazen, it's Satori itself. You already obtain Satori. But on the other hand, he also said the Mushatoku, which is like, when you practice, you must have no desire to gain anything back. So, which means like, as I understand, like if you have desire to obtain Satori, it's already attachment. It's already wrong. But what about if you are trying to obtain, let's say, the ultimate truth or ultimate wisdom? Is it also considered as attachment in Buddhism? Or basically what he was saying, the Taisen Deshimaru, the Soto Zen monk, that you must not have no attachment when you practice Zazen. But for instance, attachment to obtain the ultimate truth or ultimate wisdom, is it also bad? Is it also considered like attachment? So it's kind of like hindrance in your practice? Thank you.
So I guess I would say if there is attachment, the attachment is an opportunity for compassion. If there is attachment to gaining spiritual awakening, that
Correct.
attachment is an opportunity for generosity. And if we really are fully generous with the attachment or the greed for spiritual awakening, that generosity is spiritual awakening.
Okay. Basically, he was saying the same thing. He was saying not all attachments are bad. For instance, like to have attachment for spiritual enlightenment, which is satori, or to obtain the ultimate wisdom is not bad. It's better to have those attachments than like attachments for money, for anything else, you know, for power, for etc. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next offering is from Green.
Hi, Reb. Thank you for your talk. I've been really curious since I heard you speaking about the Lotus Sutra in January about the children that were turned by this experience of grief. And I was wondering if you could say something more about what it was about the grief itself, what it was about the experience of grief, or how they went from not being able to practice with it to being able to practice with it. Like what turned the situation?
I am, what do you call it, an advocate for grieving. And part of grieving is to respect grief. Grief is a gift, and grief wants to be felt. If we are intoxicated, the children in the story were intoxicated with, you know, their craziness. They were intoxicated, crazy kids. And the grief brought them to their senses, sobered them up. So grieving, feeling the grief helps us become sober again. And when we're sober, then we can like hear the teaching and so on. But sometimes we're so worked up that, you know, and we're so, I don't know what, defiant and self-righteous and angry about some changes in our life. Or we're so intoxicated about some situations that we can't see straight, even though we're being offered some good teaching. Like the children were offered good teaching, but they couldn't receive it. They wouldn't entertain the teaching because they were so intoxicated. So the grief came to them and they felt it. And in feeling it, they sobered up and then they realized, oh, we have this good teaching. And then they practiced it.
Okay, may I ask one more part to that question or?
Oh, could I say one more thing before you do?
Yes, please.
That one of the main ways to give grief a chance is to remember silence and stillness. A lot of people are being called to grieve, but they're running around so fast and so busy that they don't see the opportunity to, they don't even know that they're being offered grief. So a lot of people, they go in and sit in a zendo and they sit down and they start crying. They didn't even know that they had this grief. So the silence and stillness provides a wonderful opportunity for grieving. So please ask the next part.
Thank you. Earlier in your talk today, I think I heard you saying something, the natural tendency of living beings to try to get something turns into, and then I feel like I kind of missed what you were saying there. I don't know if you can remember what you were saying there.
You could say turns into, but I think probably what I would say turns with. generosity. So trying to get turns with giving. If you're, yeah, so if you can be kind to your impulses to get and then be quiet with that, you will participate in the trying to get becoming or turning with giving, getting and giving. They're turning on each other.
So I feel like I hear a lot of use of this word turn in Zen conversations. Is that what we're referring to when we're turning something? Okay.
Buddha activity is turning activity. Buddha isn't just over on enlightenment. Buddha is enlightenment and delusion turning on each other. Buddha isn't just Buddha. Buddha is Buddha and sentient beings turning on each other. Buddha isn't just generosity. Buddha is generosity working with greed. Turning. The lotus, the Dharma flower turns the Dharma flower. And the Dharma flower is turned by the Dharma flower. Turning is at the heart. Your heart is at the turning place of the world. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next offering is from May.
Hello, Reb.
Hello, May.
Thank you so much for your teaching. And then I must thank that your silence and stillness, the prayer since January, is always here. I think that is it, right? This is a nirvana. Who cares about the enlightenment or delusion? This is all concept. Who cares, right? So this is it. So if we want to look for a nirvana, here we are. And it's not comfortable. Who said it's comfortable? Who is looking for joy? This is it, right? I feel like I don't care about delusion. I don't care about alignment. And then here is infinity. And then I don't feel like I'm turning. I feel like I'm floating in the ocean with this alaya. I'm tired of judgment. I'm tired of my small mind. It's blah, 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 you know, there's two things. But I'm just floating. And then where is the generosity and where is the equanimity and where is turning? That's my question. Thank you.
I don't know where generosity is, but I know where it lives. It lives with the things that you say you don't care about. It flows into the things you said you don't care about. And the things you don't care about flow into it. And I pray that you practice compassion towards the things you say you don't care about. You can keep floating if you want to, but I hope your floating has an anchor in caring for all beings.
There is anchor. The anchor is the silence and the stillness. Thank you so much.
Our next offering is from Jean.
when Kogetsu just spoke, I thought she said, the next suffering is from Jean.
Not what I meant. Offering.
The next offering, suffering, they're kind of the same.
Well,
Welcome.
thank you. That brings me to my question. First, I would like to thank you for your faith in the practice and your faith in us. Thank you. I suspect that your previous answers are relevant to my question, but I wondered how to pursue, how to heal without wanting to get it. So how do you pivot in that direction without being motivated or being, or in some way distinguishing and wanting?
Well, one way would be to want as a gift rather than want to get.
How do you do that?
Well, if you have a want, then just let that want be a gift. Give the want. Let the want flow into the want. Let the want flow into you. Commune with the want rather than trying to get the want to give you something. Because you can want good things. That's nothing wrong with wanting good things, unless you use the want of getting good things to get something, like to get a good thing. Trying to get is our problem. Giving is our freedom and peace.
So motivation can be a gift.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can turn a good motivation into a grasping. And that kind of, if you excuse the expression, defiles a good motivation. Perfectly good motivation can be polluted by trying to get something. But you can have a good motivation as a gift rather than try to get. And again, if I could have a good motivation, I wish that you would be happy, but I can defile that by trying to get you to be happy. And then if you're not happy, I hate you. The very person I want to be happy, she's not going along with my program. So I hate you, because I'm trying to get you to be happy rather than I want you to be. But if you're not happy, I can live with you anyway. I want you to be, but you can say, but I'm not, and I don't want to be. And I'm not going to go along with your program of wanting me to be happy. But that was just a gift. I wasn't trying to manipulate you into happiness. So
that is staying seated in generosity.
Not even staying seated in generosity without even staying there. Seated in generosity and let it flow in both directions, including all motivations, even not good ones. Good motivations are good. So let's let them bloom by letting go of them.
Can you please describe a little bit more? You gave the example of wanting when it turns into grasping. Can you describe it more when it stays as a gift?
It doesn't stay as a gift, it flows.
So it is the exchange again between a Buddha and a Buddha.
That is the exchange. It doesn't stay any place. It keeps turning and pivoting and leaping. doesn't stay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next offering is from Linda.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
I like to say something about acceptance and then ask my question. I've wrestled with acceptance, the teaching of acceptance for, a long time. And it caused me, I dealt with a lot of confusion and delusion about that word. And I think it's a cause of a lot of delusion beyond me. And I finally sort of raised to a more steady awareness that acceptance doesn't mean approval. It doesn't mean that this is what is and I accept it, so it's okay and everything is okay. Funny how it could take that long to get that simple thing. And then, so I understand acceptance now, but I still think that word causes a lot of confusion in people and a lot of not very helpful thinking. But the way I understand it now is that it's simply acceptance that this is what is. This is what is. So in me and in the world, this is actually reality, which, as you were saying today, makes your heart the place that receives all suffering. So the question sort of embedded in that sounds like a political question that came up, but political and internal and external are completely connected. So this came up while you were talking about getting, let's say, and I'm thinking of a very particular situation in the world right now. Let's say that some people are with great greed and violence taking people's homes, people's lands, people's children, like a really brutal, violent situation. Those people whose stuff is being taken are struggling to keep it or to get it back. Would you say that, how would you look at both? Those are both forms of getting. Would you flatten them and say, well, this one's trying to get and this one's trying to get too? Or would you distinguish between those two situations?
If I'm reaching for something to try to get it, I want to do that as a gift. If somebody's taken my land and I feel like I would like to get the land back, I want to find a way to do that as a gift. I would like my negotiation with whoever else is involved with my land or my home. I would like my negotiation to be giving. I wish to get my land back, and I want my wish to be a gift. And of course, that sounds very difficult, but that's what I want to learn, to go up to somebody and say, I would like to talk to you about getting my land back. Or I feel like this is my rightful land and I want it back. And my belief is that it is possible that if I demonstrate generosity with the person who seems to be involved in taking my land away from me, that they could be awakened by my generosity. Could they be awakened by me not being generous and trying to get my land back? It's possible, but usually they'll just fight back. Is it possible that they'll wake up That's what I'm working for.
I could see in my privileged place as an ally of the people I see as suffering, that I could try to practice, and as a student of Zen and of you, that I could try to practice my activism the way you describe. But if I tried to imagine the people who are being killed and crushed in the most brutal way, including their nonviolent leaders, just killed off, I wouldn't think that your advice has any meaning for them. Well, it has some meaning, but nothing to do with me. I can only practice for myself as an ally.
If what I'm saying has no meaning for them, I can easily understand that it has no meaning for them. But my wish is that it would have meaning to them and it would be helpful to them, because they're already in a terrible situation. So what would be helpful? That's what I'm trying to imagine. And this is what I imagine would be helpful, especially in a situation where some force that's very powerful is, you fighting back, isn't clear that will help. And it isn't clear to me that generosity will help. It's just what I'm imagining and what I'm committed to. And if somebody doesn't find it helpful, that's another gift to me. Like I remember one time I was teaching a class at the yoga room, and I was talking about going to a grocery store and getting vegetables, but not going to get the vegetables to get something, but go to the grocery store as a gift. And people said they just couldn't imagine going to the grocery store for any other reason than to get vegetables. That's the only reason to go. Why would you go otherwise? And I said, well, I might go to the grocery store as a gift to the vegetables and the people in the grocery store. I might go for that reason, and I might come away with some vegetables, or perhaps not. But I went there and did the practice of generosity. And I do not want to go to grocery stores to get vegetables just to get them. I feel like I'm missing the main opportunity of my life if I don't go as a gift. And some people who are living in Berkeley and are not being crushed, they can't get that teaching. They just don't get it. Now, if they're getting crushed, maybe they'd get it even less. Who knows? But that teaching is kind of hard for people in good circumstances to understand. They're affluent, nobody's crushing them, and they cannot understand going to the grocery store as a gift. They can only imagine doing things to get things. And I understand that. That's natural. So I'm trying to wake myself and others up to do everything as a gift and see what kind of life that is.
Today I'm going to go to Costco. I'll think about, I'll see whether anything could happen in here. And politically, I'll just blunder along with my very best intentions.
And you won't be surprised to hear that I pray that as you go to Costco, you will receive silence and stillness. I pray for them.
Our next offering is from Jiren.
Sorry. Lately, I have been working a lot on my own trauma in my body and being with people, communities of people who are in trauma. And what you describe is really helping me be able, as somebody who doesn't really like to look at the difficult parts of life. Like, I don't look at pictures of lynchings up close or I don't really stare at the Israeli conflict and just keep looking. It's too painful. So I just kind of pretend I have virtue and stay away from it. But my own ignorance is actually a hell of a lot of demons. And so the ability to sort of see what's evil in the world and what's kind of evil in me, and be tender with that, with all beings, while growing a compassionate heart and echoing each other and receiving each other in silence, is profound. And it's a great vehicle. And I really thank you and the Great Assembly. It's not just words, what you say, it is really a pivoting action of love.
Thank you for your gift.
Our next offering is from Nicola.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much for your talk and for your last will. And as Michael, I am hoping to hear some more of you in the future. And I wanted to, because you were posing a question. Oh, I'm low in battery. You were posing a question in your talk. You said, "What about you?" And I would just like to answer. And I would like to say, I vow to learn giving, and I vow to be that giving heart. And I just see the lack of giving in me. So I really wish to learn that. And I would like to ask you, maybe it's related to that, I don't know, but I would like to ask you, what is bodhicitta?
My last will and testament is one example of bodhicitta. And tomorrow, it will be another example of bodhicitta. Your wish to learn generosity is bodhicitta. And this may perhaps not be my last response to that question.
I hope so.
Our next offering is from Baja.
Hello, Reb.
Hello.
Hello. And hello, Assembly. wonderful assembly. It was a wonderful privilege to listen to all of you and to hear your answers. And wonderful topics. Before I offer my offering, I wanted to ask you, what made you want to give such a speech, like a last speech? Do you recall what prompted you to give such a?
Well, I could say the thought that I had agreed to give a talk today prompted it. But that's just a story. I don't know what prompted it. But I did think, oh, I'm supposed to give a talk. And then what would I, and so on. What would I say if it's the last talk? That came to me. And again, it was kind of a challenging thought because that's a high standard.
Right.
Just not another talk. The last one, what would it be? So I don't know where that came from, but it came along with knowing that I'm supposed to give a talk today. And I'll probably feel that way next time I give a talk too, but I might not mention it.
Well, it's a good practice before your real last talk, I guess. But when I heard you, I thought about, well, your topic of great suffering. There is so much in extreme suffering, and I often ask myself, is it that I'm a different person now, a more aware person that sees that suffering? Or is it that the world has really changed for much worse than what we were used to? And so I keep asking myself that question. And of course, it's just a rhetorical question. There is no answers, I think. But I am observing myself that this very difficult time, full of suffering of all kinds that we have never seen before, but I'm sure our ancestors have had seen others that were worse, that it is an opportunity. It's an incredible opportunity right now for us, because as I see for myself, being confronted by the two different opposing polarized worlds with very different views and opinions and very strong ones and strong beliefs, I struggled to make sense of it, as though there was a possibility to make sense. And then finally, I came to the point that of innocence, of kind of like realizing that I cannot know. If I'm really honest, I cannot know which this side is or that side is right. I can only be generous in receiving their opinions and witnessing that, and then resting with that, being with that. And to me, this, from beginning of COVID, this time became an incredible push towards awakening, because there was nothing, I started to see the futility of thinking, of trying to figure things out, how to figure the world out. And I found myself in a place now that I almost feel stupid looking back at my life, how much energy and time was wasted trying to do those very futile things. And now it's like, I know that I don't know the answers, and if I even if I try to get them, it wouldn't make much change. There's somebody used the word faith today, and I'm seeing that now I have more faith in the whole works of the world, that things are the way they need to be, even though they seem very painful and frightening, and people make different stories. So for myself, I have been cured of my addiction to thinking through this painful period since COVID began. And I don't know if let me just look at my note. So, yeah, oh yeah, and somebody mentioned the word acceptance. And I also, through this tough time, I fully saw that acceptance is not an attitude, or it's not something that is really is acceptance. It's more like a moment of being generous enough to look with love at what's happening and dissolving into those parts that that resist, judge, try to mitigate the situation in different ways. And then from what I saw in my life, especially in personal life, there is an incredible opportunity for transformation, not just for me, but for the other person involved. The capacity to enter that space creates space for the other person to find themselves in the way they are, and there's something new possible. So I don't know, maybe you can just comment on this offering, how if you see things the way I am discovering. But to me, this is, even though the world is extremely painful to watch right now, it is an precious time that is pushing me constantly to be more intimate with what's coming up and to drop that knee-jerk reaction to do something, whether it's thinking or this or that, whatever.
Thank you very much for your offering.
Our next offering is from Michael. Michael, you might need to turn on your video. There you
Hi, Reb.
Michael.
are. Hi, Red.
Me and Mika are here. Really appreciating this talk and hearing from everyone. And I wanted to share just a real life dilemma with this from this morning. So I was preparing to go surfing and thought I was going to have a lovely morning at Rodeo Beach, and discovered as I was on my way out that some fruit in my kitchen had these little bite marks, and the fruit was, sort of moved in a way that suggested an animal crime scene of sorts. And it's very confusing because I haven't ever experienced anything like this before in our kitchen. And my immediate experience was this constriction and this fear and this sense of violation and sense of needing to, respond and react and find the culprit, So I ended up, spending all the time that I would have spent going to the beach just trying to find where mice might be coming from, or, some other signs of what's going on here. And sat down to your talk just after putting down some mouse traps. And the whole time I've been listening to your talk, I've just been wondering, like, what would generosity to these animals, whether they're mice or something else, be? And how do I get to a point of actually opening to that in line with what you're suggesting as this teaching? And yet there's still this fear and this resistance about, well, how do I protect the kitchen from whatever's invading it?
Well, there's no limit on the possible generous responses to this situation. But one thing that comes to my mind is you see the fruit with the bite marks in it, and maybe your first response isn't, oh, this is an opportunity for generosity. Maybe your first response is to try to get control, to tighten up, to not flow into the damaged fruit, to not flow into the possible rodent invasion, but tighten up. So at that time, maybe if I noticed, oh, I'm tightening up, I'm having an ungenerous response, I just imagined, is there a chair around here somewhere? And maybe I'll sit down now and I'll just take a little break before I go on this campaign to find out what's going on. I'll just sit down and practice generosity with this challenging situation, this invasion. Doesn't mean that if you sit down and practice generosity with this invasion, that the invaders will, back off. But anyway, you are sitting there maybe for a moment and saying, how can I open my heart to this challenging situation? And you might have in that situation, that would be an act of generosity. Just to wonder about what might be generous, that could be a gift, a big gift. And then you might feel like, yeah, I think I am practicing generosity. Yeah, now maybe I'll generously, as a gift, I'll wash this fruit or cut off the parts that have been bitten. And maybe, I don't know, as a gift, maybe I'll put them in the refrigerator. And now as a gift, maybe I'll clean my kitchen really well. As a gift as an act of giving. And also, if I by any chance have any ill will towards rodents, maybe I could stop for a second. And how can I remember stillness with this ill will? So those are some gestures, some possible ways of being generous with this challenging situation. Well, you have a relationship now with some unknown creatures, and it is possible to be generous with it, and it's possible to clean your house. Like at our temple, No Abode, people clean that place a lot. And we used to have lots and lots of mice, lots and lots of mice doing all kinds of mouse-like things. One of the main ones is leaving mouse shit all over the house. But people cleaned and cleaned and cleaned. And I don't know if they cleaned out of generosity, but I think they maybe cleaned out of generosity. They generously cleaned the temple and cleaned the temple. And now the mice aren't interested in the temple anymore. They like dirty places where there's lots of food. Mm-hmm. They find food in the dirt, but there's no dirt, and there's no traps, and there's no mice. But if we leave the food out, they'll come back. And so far, we have not been practicing generosity in the form of, let's put some food out for the mice and see if they'll come back. We haven't done that. And if you miss a chance, then be generous to missing the chance. Let generosity flow from you into the missing the chance, and let missing the chance flow into you. Thank you for this up-to-date example.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great to see you guys.
Yeah. Our next offering is from Carol.
Hello, Reb.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I see you have a baby.
We do have a baby. So yeah, during COVID, we became a foster family. And yes.
Is that a boy or a girl?
It's a little girl. Her name is Amaya.
Okay, Amaya.
And she's 6 weeks old.
Did she have a name when she came, or did you give it to her?
No, she has the name, and it's the name the mother gave, and the mother's in treatment, hoping to get her back.
Okay, that would be
good. And I just want to appreciate your teaching so much. It's been a gift as we parent Amaya. And a lot of it is that I was really moved by what Basia was saying. It's this sense of, again, not wanting her to suffer, right? Starting a digestive tract is really hard on a child. There's a lot of pain, and a lot of it I can't do anything about. But if I get caught up in it, then I can't be the stillness that she needs to process what's going on. So again, it's such an opportunity to work with grandmother mind, and it's different than mother mind. It's so I just want to again just say thank you so much for your teaching and how much that's been supportive of what we've been working with.
Thank you.
Yes, girl.
Thank you for taking care of the teaching with this beautiful girl.
I don't see any other hands up at the moment.
Well, thank you, Great Assembly, and thank you, Kogetsu, for hosting us.
You're very welcome. Would you like to do the closing chant?
Would you like me to?
Yeah, I think that'd be nice.